Good evening, everyone. Welcome to On the Spot, Little African News. My name is Mone Davids, and I am the founder, publisher, and host of Little African News and On the Spot. So tonight we're having a special episode because of the latest news. We have a new Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Antonio Delgado. And we're going to be having a conversation because we have some questions regarding Mr. Delgado's background, and especially considering that Kathy Hochul's team seems to have a difficulty properly vetting candidates. We want to have a conversation about some issues or concerns and, to be blunt, delusions that have been raised. So with that said, I want to introduce our wonderful panel that's joining us tonight. We're going to start off with Miss Damaris Mone. Welcome, Damaris.
Hi, Mona. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I can't wait to get started on the conversation. My name is Damaris Mone. I happen to be a political consultant. I'm also a candidate. I'm an advocate. I'm also a co-host for VLX podcast. So I want to thank you today for inviting me about this conversation. You've seen my tweets on the topic. I also have my concerns, and I can't wait to get into the discussion of what does being Latino mean? What's identity?
Thank you. Thank you, Damaris. Our next panelist is Mr. Sammy Ravelo. Welcome, Sammy.
Hi, Mona. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I am a community advocate. Obviously, I'm a retired police lieutenant. Also ran for politics, not running for anything right now. But more important, I am a real Afro-Latino from the Dominican Republic. So I'm very happy to have this discussion with you.
Fantastic. Welcome. And last but never least, Mr. Dion Powell. Welcome, Dion. Thanks for joining us this evening. You're on mute.
Yeah, good morning. Good evening, everybody. I was just sharing this on my social media. I'm County Committeeman Dion Powell of the 79th Assembly District, the 15th ED. I represent 169th Street to 171st Street from Washington Avenue, Fulton Avenue. I'm also the director of the City of New York for Blexit, New York, if you ever heard of that organization. We're changing the narrative for African Americans.
Oh, thank you. Welcome to all of our panelists. I have to say, I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. So Brian Benjamin, months ago when Kathy Hochul appointed Brian Benjamin, many of us, including many of our panelists on the show last year, and for many episodes, we all kept on saying, what the hell is Kathy Hochul thinking? Why him? Considering all of the red flags, public red flags, documented red flags, and she still went and she selected Brian Benjamin because she was playing identity politics, clearly, and thinking that Brian Benjamin is going to bring in the Black vote, the Black American vote, even though Brian Benjamin came in third place in his own district for the comptroller race and never really had a race for Senate. So now, with what's happened with Brian Benjamin, the Democrats were able to change the law to suit themselves. And now we have a new Lieutenant Governor, Antonio Delgado, who is currently, or who was a congressman, upstate New York congressman. And Mr. Delgado is now our Lieutenant Governor. So, welcome to our Lieutenant Governor. But now this is where I and many others question Kathy Hochul's vetting when it comes to candidates and her decision making, because Mr. Delgado has been touted as being Afro-Latino, and many of you, and for those who don't know, I am South African. I was born in South Africa. I was raised in Bed-Stuy. My family moved here in the early 80s during the height of apartheid. So I am South African. And my heritage as a South African is Cape Malay. Cape Malays were brought as, just giving people some geography and world history because people don't understand this. The Cape Malays were brought by the Dutch East Indian Company from Batavia, Malaysia, to South Africa as prisoners and indentured servants by the Dutch, our colonizers. So that is my heritage. My father is Cape Malay. My mother is what people call a South African colored. That's a mixed race person. So that's who I am. And I identify as a Black woman and as an African and as a Black American because I am American living in the greatest nation in the world. But, you know, I get it. You know, sometimes you really don't know who people are, where they come from, what their background is. So many people will not know that on my birth certificate, it says Cape Malay. It doesn't say Black. It doesn't say colored. It says Cape Malay. That's who I am, and that's what I am documented as. So I can say I am half Asian because my father is Cape Malay. So now coming back to this, Africa has been colonized by the Dutch, by the British, by the Portuguese, by the Spanish, by the Germans, and by the French. And this is what brings us to Mr. Delgado. Our new lieutenant governor has been touted by Kathy Hochul as being Afro-Latino. He has self-identified as Afro-Latino since he ran for Congress a few years ago. And in everything that you read about Mr. Delgado, you know, the claim is he's Latino or he's Puerto Rican or he's Afro-Latino. But as Mr. Delgado said himself yesterday, he is part African-American and part Cape Verdean. He is not Puerto Rican. And then he did some type of word salad, and we're going to play the video when he was asked and confronted about what his heritage is. Now, before we do that, I'd like to put a picture of where Cape Verde is on the map, on the where it is on this lovely globe that we all live on. So if our producer could show us, there we go. Okay, everyone. Now, as you see, Cabo Verde, because it's Cabo Verde in Portuguese, in English it's Cape Verde. Cape Verde is, what is that? I don't know. Damaris, is that what's that? Is that South America? Is that the Caribbean? Where's Jamaica at? Where's Puerto Rico? No.
It's on the western side of this hemisphere.
It's in the Atlantic Ocean where the aforementioned places are as well. So the connection they have is the Atlantic Ocean. That should be the answer.
Okay, so as everybody can see, Cape Verde is an island in the Atlantic Ocean, right next to Senegal and Mauritania. Between Senegal and Mauritania is where you find Cape Verde. Cape Verde was colonized by the Portuguese. Cape Verdeans are Africans, okay? It's right there. Cape Verde. The other places colonized by the Portuguese include Angola, Mozambique, the islands off of Africa, Sao Tome, Principe, Guinea-Bissau. These are all Portuguese colonies. South Africa is a Dutch colony. Namibia is a German colony. Senegal is a French colony. So Cape Verde and Cape Verdeans are Africans, okay? That is a fact. Colonized by the Portuguese. That is a fact. Angolans, Mozambicans, they all have those last names. Castro, you name the different Portuguese, Spanish-sounding names. They have them because they were colonized by the Portuguese. Just as here in America, Black Americans don't know what, don't have their names because they have the names of who? The plantation owners. Okay? So I want to play now. I'd like to play for our viewers the response at yesterday's press conference when Mr. Delgado, who is half African American and half Cape Verdean, his response when asked exactly what is he, because he's been touted as being Afro-Latino by Kathy Hochul, by the Democrats, and he's claimed to be Afro-Latino since he first ran for Congress in a district that has, a Latino population. So if we could play the video.
Congressman, I have a question about your heritage has been described in a couple of different ways in the press. Black, Puerto Rican. I'm curious,
Turn up the volume.
And if you could speak a little more broadly about how your background informs your identity.
Yeah, thank you.
Turn up the volume.
I am African American, and I am Cape Verdean. That is those are the core aspects of my background. Because of my name, Antonio Ramon Delgado. Maybe because I also played basketball a little while out in Puerto Rico, and I love my Puerto Rican brothers and sisters. I really do, but I'm not Puerto Rican. But Afro-Latino. I think the Cape Verdean aspect of that is certainly a part of my identity. But at the same time, I grew up, like I said, at Macedonia Baptist Church, a Black Baptist church, and so very much rooted in the tradition of Black culture. And so all of it informs me, in terms of how I go about the work. My wife is Black and Jewish. Our children we're raising Jewish. And so, all these different entry points connect to me and just really help me to figure out how to go in and out of communities and find the connective tissue. And that's the beautiful thing, I think, too, about the state of New York is how multicultural, multi-ethnic it is. And there's so much power in that. And it's really the essence of our country, fundamentally. And so, again, the chance to be able to tap into that and to be a part of that energy, which I don't think has been fully tapped into and is only growing, is very exciting.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Okay, could we just go back again to just the beginning part up until just for our viewers to hear one more time, up until the part of his affinity for Puerto Rico and his brothers.
Mona, if I may, maybe you should click the closed captioning button. That way, everything's in writing.
Great suggestion.
Also, how is your health? Do you have any health concerns we should know about?
As far as I'm concerned, I'm in pretty good health. Yeah, I appreciate the question.
Yes,
Speculate about and opine about, that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, these decisions are made from a place of within more than they are from a place of without.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
There would be statewide primary.
What the future can hold, understanding the impact that I can have on the state, and understanding what I can bring to the table in that regard. That was where I was coming at this from. The sort of external dynamics that people like to pontificate about and extrapolate about and opine about, that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, these decisions are made from a place of within more than they are from a place of without.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, we need to go to 5213. I think that there's a delay. 5213 should be the timestamp.
Black, Puerto Rican. I'm curious, what's accurate? And,
Okay, that's good.
A little more broadly about how your background informs your identity.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I am African American, and I am Cape Verdean. That is those are the core aspects of my background. Because of my name, Antonio Ramon Delgado. Maybe because I also played basketball a little while out in Puerto Rico, and I love my Puerto Rican brothers and sisters. I really do, but I'm not Puerto Rican. But Afro-Latino. I think the Cape Verdean aspect of that is certainly a part of my identity. But at the same time, I grew up, like I said, at Macedonia Baptist Church, a Black Baptist church, and so very much rooted in the tradition of Black culture. And so all of it informs me, in terms of how I go about the work. My wife is Black and Jewish.
Okay, we
Children
can
were
pause it
raising,
there. So let's get started, and I'm just gonna hand the floor over to Miss Damaris Mone. Our Lieutenant Governor loves his Puerto Rican brothers and sisters. Okay, so Damaris, off to you. Is he Afro-Latino? Just because he loves his Puerto Rican brothers and sisters, and his last name is Delgado, like all of the other African colonies, whose citizens, whose people have Portuguese last names. I'll just leave. Is he Latino? Is there a connection culturally, economically, geographically?
Well, if we're gonna go by names, I mean, I have a Greek first name. I have a French last name. I am 100% Puerto Rican. My name is pronounced Damaris Mone, but I had no control over, any of my French or Spanish ancestors that had came, and much more I had control over my African ancestors that were dragged over in chains. And so I think it's been a really interesting conversation because as we're discussing what's an identity, and earlier I had mentioned, to you when we were talking about this, that I think we were opening Pandora's box in identity, right? Because now, what is a Latino, right? And it is a whole slew of different things. You could be Asian, you could be Arabic, you could be African, you could be European, you could be Jewish, you could be Muslim, right? It's not a race, it is an ethnicity, it's a cultural understanding, but it's also racial because of the indigenous population that was here, whether your Quechuan or your, mestizo, as we would use as a term. But the combination of what makes a Latino, it's the food, it's the history, it's respecting our ancestors and knowing what their history was, right? Understanding that part. And I understand that he's trying to tie his horse wagon, onto what may be politically expedient to say, to explain to people why he has a name by Antonio Delgado, right? Which sounds very Spanish. It's a beautiful name, but what's in a name? I mean, we, here, once we come into the United States, Asian children no longer are usually named Asian names. We don't really use African names as much. And so we kind of end up adopting, this country. But I happen to have a very old name, Damaris, or my mom, as my family pronounces it, Damaris. It's actually it's in the Old Testament. It's an old biblical name, so it's been around for a very long time. But typically, you do find it primarily amongst a lot of Latinos. But I have met people in Africa who have also the name Damaris, so I know it's a very old name. But going into, are you Latino? It's almost, I'm torn between being honored that he would like to be an honorary Latino to be insulted that you're using our history, our situation, so that you could check off boxes on a form. Because to me, that's what it really seemed like, was that, can he speak to the African American base? Can he speak to Black people, right? Because I had an interesting conversation earlier with somebody who's now has decided they're going to refer to themselves as a Black American, because he's like, I'm meeting people who are white Africans born in Africa coming here, and they're African Americans. He's like, so how do I lay claim to that name now, right? So it's like identity politics is like opened up, and now you can, however you feel, right? And in a way, I'm okay with that, because as long as you're a happy human being and that's how you're identifying. But I also find it insulting if you're using it, if it's usury, right? If you're doing it so that you could get further ahead. He has no tie, because again, why he could say that they were colonized by the Portuguese, they were not replaced by the Portuguese. They continue being African, right? And so, in the sense that what I'm saying about like what happened to Latin America, what happened to the Caribbean, where you had all these Europeans that came, conquered, and stayed, right? And have decided and made it or raped the indigenous people of the Americas, and then as well as brought over slaves in which they mated and raped, right? And then, so there's a mixture, there's a history of understanding that has nothing to do with that side of the world, right? And so even though he has a tie to Portuguese, it's still a Portugal, it's not still this part of the world, right? It's still another part of the country. It's not the Americas, right? So he doesn't have that tie or that history that you can say that he's really African American, And so I did think that it was really interesting, and I don't want to get off, I don't want to start the hot topics of identification, because I spoke to my daughter and I asked her, and she had one of these looks of like, no, he can't be Latino. Like, I explained the whole thing, but I turned around, I said, but if he wanted to, he could identify as a woman, and that'd be perfectly fine. And she kind of gave me this look of like, and she didn't know how do you approach that. So we could change gender, but we can't change our racial identity. But then how do we deal with the Rachel
Dolezal,
and
who was a Latina? I think Damaris, you raised some very important points here. The Latino community has been very outspoken with regards to representation, and in New York State,
yes.
Not just in New York State, but also New York City. As they say, there isn't a Latino in a citywide office. Statewide, there isn't a Latino elected to a statewide office.
Right.
And they've been pushing for that. And I agree with many Latino leaders who say they have been disrespected. Because when it comes to getting their votes, yes, come and give us your votes. But when it comes to putting them on the list to speak at the Democratic Convention or consider them for a position like lieutenant governor, they're ignored. Mm-hmm. And with this, because they so wanted that representation, and with Antonio Delgado being touted as Latino or Puerto Rican or Afro-Latino, clearly the Hochul campaign thought that, okay, here we get to check all those boxes that you spoke about, Damaris. And, here we have a Latino man, an Afro-Latino man that can counter and run against the three, not one, three Latinas, real Latinas running for lieutenant governor. But, as you said, there's no connection. And today people want us to buy into their delusions of, a man can be a woman, and there are no more, then they say there are no more women, they're birthing people. Like, if someone tells us that they're a unicorn, we have to agree that they're a unicorn just because they believe that they're a unicorn. So we have to conform and erase common sense, and just agree with whatever they think they are. No matter the science, and in this case, no matter the geography, it's unbelievable. And what I want to raise, and I'd like Sammy to weigh in on this, with Jessica Krug, the woman that posed as a Latina, she was a professor, she posed as a Latina for many years, widely known, widely respected, widely sought after to speak on Latino issues and anything impacting Latino women. who turned out to be a white Jewish woman posing as a Latina. So my question, and I want to come to Sammy, is, you know, what makes Mr. Delgado, or do you think that Mr. Delgado's situation is different to Rachel Dolezal, a white woman that posed as a black woman, or Jessica Krug that posed as a Latino woman? Both of these women posed or appropriated the race and the culture of other people to put themselves and move themselves forward in their professional careers. What is the difference between Jessica Krug posing as a Latina, Rachel Dolezal posing as a black woman, and now Antonio Delgado posing as Latino to push his professional career? And doesn't that deny and deprive Latinos from getting those academic positions, from having
Yes.
a genuine Latino as lieutenant governor? Like, doesn't that stop, you know, aren't you cheating people of that opportunity? So I'll shut up and I'll give it to Mr. Ravelo.
Okay, so a few things. I call it pervasive in the sense that, you know, we have real qualified folks here that are of Latino descent, real Latino descent, that are qualified, overly qualified, to be a lieutenant governor. So this is, I mean, this is strike two on the governor now rolling out a, you know, a running mate when she's given the chance, in my opinion. But you know, we got to look into something real quick. I don't know who should be more insulted, if Latinos, Puerto Ricans, African Americans, and more importantly, Kurt
He's denying he's African. He
Yeah.
doesn't want to say he's an African. When
Correct.
he's African, but he
Correct.
doesn't say he's an African.
Correct. But more importantly, Cape Verdeans. You know, this is a missed opportunity because this is the truth would have been just a beautiful story.
Right.
I mean, hello. I mean, an African American man, you know, Cape Verdean. Honestly, I'm going to be full disclosure, and please don't insult me, anybody. I really wasn't sure where. I knew it was in Africa. I really didn't know exactly where it was,
Right.
Until this happened, which goes back to my story of a missed opportunity of a great story.
Yes.
You know, and again, you know, this all falls on the feet of our lieutenant governor. You know, it shows that she's not qualified. All full disclosure, you know, we have Diana Reina, a real Latina woman who's running. She now gets put in the back seat, or people are not going to focus much on her because we have folks that should know better telling us, listen, we have this Afro-Latino, which, by the way, you know, I mentioned, you know, I am an Afro-Latino. I am a real Afro-Latino born in the Dominican Republic, descendant of folks like Damaris said, folks that were brought to the island to conduct forced labor centuries ago. And I'm very proud of that. But being a Latino, you know, not only is the mixture of a lot of cultures. You know, we have French, we have Italian, we have Portuguese, we have the most important race, which is the black race among us, you know, and that's what makes us, you know, Latinos, Caribbean folks. And like I said, I don't know who should be insulted. I mean, Puerto Ricans, he just managed to insult African Americans and Puerto Ricans. I went to play basketball in Puerto Rico. I mean, come on. Are you serious? You know, I love my Puerto Rican people. You know, this is all about votes. This is all about getting the Latino vote to go out, and Kathy Hochul's trying to show her. This is her way of telling Latinos, hey, listen, I'm going to have somebody with a Latino or Hispanic last name, and he will represent you. And, you know, it's not really the truth. And like I said, we're fine with anybody that gets put on there if they're there for the right reasons. So, you know, I'm very disturbed of the fact that, you know, the governor decided to go this route. And, you know, it's something that shows that, you know, we gotta look a little, we gotta kick the tires a little more with this governor. And, you know, I hope people realize, you know, do their homework when they go out and start vote in these upcoming elections, because, you know, this is what we're getting. This is a one-party system right now in New York, and I'll let Dion speak to that. He being from Brexit, but it's time to start voting for folks because of their background and because of what they have done, as opposed to party identity politics,
Right.
if you will.
Right. And one thing to what Sammy was saying, and again going back into the name and replacement and who insulted, not being proud of sharing that history. But the thing is that my concern is also, what does it say about the governor's staff that they did not know what a Latino was, right? So it says to me she doesn't even have close staff to her to have been able to explain to her that Cape Verde is nowhere near in Latin America. Right, it's not an island off of Latin America. It was never, never conquered by the Spaniards. But while we do consider Brazilians Latino, but they are not Hispanic, right? So there are very, there's very defined borders as to how we describe people. As Sammy has said, I do not refer to myself as Afro-Latina, because I feel that my skin is too pale and I would be insulting to somebody. But in Puerto Rico, I am called Jabal, which means I am of light skin, light eyes, but I have African features, right? And so I prefer to use the term Jabal, because to me, when I say African American, I mean Afro-Latino, people immediately are going to look at my skin color, like what's up with that? And then therefore I would be posing, right? And so I personally take all these things into consideration because I don't want to offend somebody. And I don't understand how the executive bodies, executive staff don't get that either. Like, how did you not understand that you were going to insult the largest ethnic group in New York State? And then you're going to insult some African Americans and Africans that you weren't proud to admit that you're from off the coast of Africa. But Dion, you've been shaking your head, and I know you definitely want to jump in. And so, but I'm just, so as a Jabal Latina, I there's a little bit more to the ingredients. It's like if you're making jambalaya, you got to use those ingredients to make jambalaya. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's just your muck. I don't know. Like, not to offend anybody, but whether it's paella, right? Obviously, if you're Latino, it's paella. So it's everything's in there. There's going to be seafood and meat, and it's all mixed in the rice. And so, but you still need to have certain ingredients to really make that. But I don't. Go ahead, Dion. What's up?
So, Dion, you visited the continent recently, and if I recall, you went to Senegal and the Gambia, and you were supposed to go to Cape Verde, because Cape Verde is right there off the coast of Africa. So, Dion, I saw some people are saying now that that Antonio Delgado is not Hispanic, he's not Puerto Rican, he's not Latino, he's Portuguese. That's the latest that people are saying. But it brings me back to this. South Africa was colonized by the Dutch. I speak Dutch, but that doesn't make me Dutch. Namibia was colonized by the Germans. That doesn't make the people in Namibia German. It doesn't make the people in Senegal French or any of the other Francophone countries. Mozambicans are not Portuguese, neither are Angolans. So why exactly now is it just a special situation, an exception for Antonio Delgado?
Such a loaded question, and so much. Okay, I can't talk yet. I gotta build up to the climax because you know me. I have lots of notes on this side of the screen that's gonna come out of this mouth here pretty soon. But I gotta keep our audience in suspense as I keep elongating. So To answer your question, this is where Republicans, conservatives, and other objective people have been screaming for decades. The slippery slope of our daily politics, and as I like to say now, putting feelings before facts. Just like President Joe Biden with his Supreme Court pick. I want a black woman. Once again, people across the board, not from a place of maliciousness or racism, would say, wait a minute, where's the meritorious system here? Same thing with Kaki Hukum. I would like to hear you say something in Dutch. And Damaris, thank God you didn't claim to be Boricua or Taino Indian, or else they'd be really mad at you because, you know, that's cultural misappropriation. So remember that misappropriation?
But why?
Damaris? No,
Well,
I'm just messing with you. No, I'm just
okay, I was like, how would that be misappropriation? I also,
I know you also identify as Boricua and Taino Indian. I'm
right,
sure.
I was actually ready to bring out photos because, again, as we were discussing, as a Latina, I refer to us like kind of cats. Our kids will come out like any color and hair and texture and eye color.
Right. The good hair. The good hair. Remember that? The good hair?
Right.
Well,
good hair, bad hair.
Now, hopefully, I'm not misappropriating. Hopefully,
but we, even Sammy's own country has had their own issues in dealing with their own ancestral history, and a lot of Latin American countries have had to deal with, that reality of what had happened, 500 and 400 years ago that lasted all the way up until 1868. I mean, slavery lasted much longer in Latin America than it did in the United States.
That's right. The Dominican Republic has the first university in the Western Hemisphere. Arturo Schomburg is actually Puerto Rican after the Schomburg Censor. There's so much educational elements we could unpack here. But if I can appropriate something, this whole situation, es no bueno. Isn't that great? So thank you, Mona, for exposing our American media's ignorance. Thank you, Mona, for also exposing our New York State Democratic compromised media. Thank you, Mona, for exposing our Democrat compromised Latino media that piggybacks off the extreme media. Now, back to Blexit, as Sammy alluded to earlier, we have a counterpart called Lexit, the Latino exit from the progressive parties and all kind of ideologies for this reason. But Mona, of course, thank you for exposing Kathy Hochul's administration's vetting process that once again put feelings before facts, merits, and all that other things. And as a black man, I'm offended by the whole situation overall, from Brian Benjamin to Mr. Delgado. So I'll say this publicly because I'm like that with civic education. I will not be voting for the re-election of Kathy Hochul and her lieutenant governor, which is we're talking about right now. So let's take me, for example, across the board. What boxes are you checking off on the census? Check African-American/Black. Check non-Hispanic. Fine. So one of the things I want to present to you guys is this. Objectivity's out the window. One of the things that the Democrat compromised media doesn't like to do is critique all these items that make you scream Republican. They don't even want to use the word gerrymandering for the supermajority of Democrats that are controlling and influencing the redistricting process. So the media has to be looked at very hard. And it's a good thing as minorities, we have this platform, thanks to Little African News, to express our opinion. Back to Kathy Hochul. Who is she hiring that has any competence from the minority community and from the Black community, from the Latino community, behind the scenes, that's in her ear and a core circle of trust? King Cuomo's once again behind the scenes laughing at the whole situation as it's imploding around them. Now, watch this. 2018, back to the Delgado race, there weren't any Latino candidates there, upstate, being the first upstate congressman of color, allegedly. And if he was downstate where we're at, and he had Latinos coming up, maybe they'll pull his card. For example, he's going up against two Latinas in the primary. We'll see if they pull his card. But unfortunately, as a black man and minority, I'll still be offended because they're going after the feelings of the identity politics as opposed to the merits of the record and what's going on. So that's where I stand right now with my point of view of the entire situation. And it's up to the other two Latino Democratic candidates to either attack this in a way to expose them and lose the votes on that side of the team, or just let it rock to put feelings before the facts.
Well, what I was told today, because I mean, my phone has been ringing, and I told you, Mona, are some Latino leaders in New York State co-sign this. You know, this is what's disturbing to me. You know, I mean, I'm not going to vote for a Latino just because they're Latino. They have to also be qualified, in my book. You know, I just want to make it clear here, because I'm not going to vote for an African American or a white person just because of their. I don't do that. They have to be qualified, and two, they have to believe in some of the things that I believe, strongly, like public safety, for example. I'm strong on public safety. So, it's just not the fact that his name's Antonio Delgado and they're telling us he's Latino. Now, all of a sudden here, you're going to vote for him. But, I was at a NAACP meeting yesterday.
NAACP.
Right. And we were talking about this yesterday, about how we have a one-party system and we all just go like a herd and just check the box to anybody, if the Democratic establishment tells us this is the person you got to vote for, and we just vote for that person. And then, 3 months later, we realize, oh, shoot, this person doesn't care about what I care about, but I just went and voted Democrat, because that's what I'm being told. We have to start teaching our own folks that we gotta stop that process of just co-signing whatever they tell us. It has to stop. There was one lady in the meeting, God bless her soul. She was comparing gerrymandering to what's happening with Roe v. Wade. Somehow the two got confused, and out of her mouth was, the Republicans are letting us have it. And I kind of got a little, taken aback, because this lady doesn't understand that everything that's happened to her directly, whether it's poverty, whether it's crime, whether it's schools, whether it's anything, it's the Democrats. In the last 40 years, it's been Democrats here, especially in the Bronx, the bluest county in America. When I tell people that, they're like, really? Yeah, this is the bluest county in America, the Bronx. So,
I don't know more about that. I mean,
she's Republicans over Roe v. Wade, and we're talking about gerrymandering. So, education also plays a role. And, I dare to say, as a lifelong Democrat, we have to now start letting our people know that Democrats are the reason that we have all the problems that we have. Anything that we have good, we can look at the Democrats and say, great, you guys did it. But everything that we have bad, you guys, it's your fault.
So
that's why I was saying that.
I do want to step in, and I'm not trying to justify anyone's role or job, but I do want to make sure that we point out and understand a few things, right? There's a lack of Latino leadership. There is barely no Latino leadership in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
Downstate electeds were busy. They looked at the name. They said, okay, you said, why would I question it? Why am I going to question you? You should know who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't deal with him because they're city and state electeds and not congressional electeds, they may not have known. Esbiat would have known, but again, he would have had to have had a conversation. AOC may have known. You know what I mean? But as we mentioned, he is on the Black and Hispanic caucus, I believe, in Congress, right? But one of the things I do want to point out is, due to a lack of having Latino leadership and representation, we're continue being misguided. The other thing is that we have a lack of Latino reporters to have been able to ask questions, right? They're not, Dion was like, oh, well, the Spanish media just captures on to, white Anglo media, and he's right, but it's very little. It's a much smaller budget, and the larger papers don't necessarily have.
That's not true. We all know Telemundo and Univision being subsidiaries of NBC. Wait, hold on. Let me say this. It says 2018.
No, Dion, stop. All right. We're talking about English-speaking Latinos in a service in which, because the majority of Latinos that are in the United States and in New York speak English, they do not speak Spanish. Okay, so to continue lumping us up as if we should all speak Spanish. I didn't learn how to speak Spanish until, several years ago. My parents didn't teach me to speak Spanish because my Puerto Rican parents arrived in the 1940s. when they got here, they were beaten up for being Puerto Rican. They were beaten up for speaking Spanish. Okay, so those Puerto Ricans that trailblazed here first is the reason why everybody else can now speak Spanish now. My parents were so paranoid in teaching me Spanish because they were afraid that I was going to get my ass, I was going to get my behind kicked, right? And so they made sure that I learned how to speak English properly and appropriately. My mother and her sisters, to lose their accent and to learn how to speak English, went to go see British films so that they could learn how to appropriately speak English. My mother's thing was that I had to learn how to speak English properly, right? And so that was their main concern before me learning how to speak Spanish. They had no idea by the time the mid-1970s came along that the country would change and Spanish would be progress forward, and now you can get all your things in bilingual, and that's another story about ESL, emergent situation. But, again, so because I got tired of people saying to me, ay, pero tú eres puertorriqueña, tú no puedes hablar español. Listen, I'm still practicing as far as I'm concerned. I'm still trying to learn because, the vocabulary, my conjugations, have trouble. But the reality is that I took it upon myself to make sure that I had learned to speak Spanish, right? And I could sit here and when we say, how do you identify as Latino? Well, if you don't speak Spanish, do you cook it? I mean, do you dance it? Do you listen to the music? Do you understand the history, right? But there are plenty of Latinos in the United States with their surnames being Rodriguez, Garcia, Munoz, who don't speak Spanish, who don't listen to Spanish music, who don't watch Spanish news, right?
Damaris.
Have very little connection to it other than their abuelita, right?
Damaris.
Stories about, the old country and this and that. So not everybody's going to have that connection.
Damaris.
Say Delgado. Yes.
Let's go back to the Democrat, liberal, compromise media. Now, Mona, the producer behind the scenes, I don't know if you want to share my Twitter, but Telemundo and Univision were congratulating the first Hispanic. That was Telemundo, and Univision was congratulating the first Latino. So once again, this is what we have to expose, talk about. Back to what Sammy said at NAACP meeting.
That's the part that you weren't getting, because the producers of Telemundo and Univision are busy dealing with the Latin America world, right? They're not necessarily local. I mean, while they'll have local anchors, right? But
we had Luis Miranda, what's that thing? Estados Unidos, the Latino Victory Fund or Latino Political Fund.
That's correct.
Latinos Unidos.
Yes, yeah. So, they put out a press release. Last I checked, their press release is still up, touting, the first Latino being appointed as lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
The Latino community, bless their hearts. They really have been gushing, so proud and so happy.
Can I weigh in on this real quick?
Because he's not Latino.
Can I weigh in on this real quick, Mona? Because I kind of disagree with Damaris in the sense that, we cannot, what's the word I'm trying to use here? Just dismiss the fact that the two major television stations get it so wrong for our people. For the fact that Telemundo and Univision would get it so wrong, and then put it out there. Remember, you get one chance to, once you put it out there, some folks go about their business for the next 5 months believing what they were told initially. They're not going to hear the intricacy of us discussing the fact that, we were told a lie. We were told a lie, and that is votes. Believe it or not, we don't vote at the percentage that we should, but those are votes now that when those folks go into the booth, whatever percentage it is, it could be 2, 3, 4%, which could be the difference in a primary. Those votes are probably go with Delgado because they told these folks that they were Latino. I'm telling you, my mom, I called her tonight, and she believes Antonio Delgado is probably Cuban.
Right. but Sammy,
And she votes every election.
Right, but Sammy, one of the things that I definitely wanted to say, because going as we say that, but again, Telemundo received a press release. So unless they did an interview, right, or it was an investigative interview. Now I don't watch Spanish news, so Dion, excuse me, Sammy, maybe you could update me on that. However, the point
I'm
is,
texting you right now.
as a former communications person, director, I would send out a press release. You would follow up. Did you get the press release? Especially as a government communications person.
Yeah, no, they touted him as being the first, the first. Let's.
No, I get what you're saying, Damaris. I get it. I get it. I get it.
But my point is that it was a political consulting firm that worked for Hochul that pushed out.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about it is,
let's go to Dion. Dion, you had a point that you were trying to make, and then I think there's some other things that you wanted to add.
well, let's see where it's more intentional. Now, if this guy was intentional Latino since 2018, just like any other Latinos that make history, especially upstate, he would have gravitated, or number two, the Latino media would have gravitated towards him for the exclusive, either in Spanish or New York One Noticias. So once again, that's shame on them. And the next thing is, now that this has come out, and I text both of you guys some interesting Twitter posts that I put up with both of them saying that he's Hispanic. And he's Hispanic.
He cannot, because
I'm just wait. You see, this is the problem, Damaris.
Only Hispanic descendant could be Hispanic.
No, I'm not telling you what I'm saying. I'm telling you what Telemundo. You see, this is where the journalism, because my degree's in communications and stuff like that, whatever. This is when you have to scrutinize it critically, critical thinking and common sense, right? So I'm just reiterating what they're telling the masses. Whereas if you look at the facts and say, hey, this is what's going on. Now, will the mainstream controlled media continue this narrative after we, the minorities on the ground, are yelling at the top of our lungs through Little Africa News that this is wrong? Are we as minorities, once again, back to the NAACP, the Bronx branch, when everybody says we all, Dion's first question is, what do you mean we all? The groupthink has got to stop, which is another key Republican conservative buzzword, trigger word, and we have to stop being offended and outraged and let it reflect on our votes at the ballot booth. Like, once again, I don't know about you three, but Dion Powell always puts his neck out as the vocal member of the silent majority. I will not be voting for the re-election of Kathy Hochul, and I will not be voting for Antonio Delgado as the lieutenant governor. Now, mind you, what minority, Latino, and Black media will publicly come out and say that with their report card as to the reasons why? Identity politics, now we're seeing hurt us. You ladies, you felt some far away by the definition of a woman being changed because of the liberal progressive agenda. Republicans were screaming this for the past 30 to 40 years, but they're demonized. And once again, what media are we all going to turn to? If more minorities tuned into this station and left all those other big name brands that attract people with these sound bites alone, that would send a message.
Yeah, I will definitely agree with you on that. I mean, again, we do know that there is an issue with corporately controlled media, right? Sites, and special interests, and everybody has a special interest. You know what I mean? Our special interest is wanting the truth. Our special interest has been advocating for communities to have services, right? We work against the grain. We have challenged the machine. We've asked the machine to own up to the BS that they have continued to do. I agree with you, Dion, in regards to, I'm very reserved about who I'm going to vote. And I'm really, I haven't looked at all the other candidates closely enough to say that definitely has
Whoa. I didn't say that either. I'm just telling you who I'm standing right now as to not to vote for. And progressively. Now, if you guys have the courage to say that right now, it will shake the world.
No. I'm just saying that I just haven't thought about it. We should, and everybody should think about it. All right. And at this point, it is really important, because I do agree with Dion. As Democrats, we've gone in, and it's just like all along the line, check. Okay, Democrats, you walked out. You know nothing about that person. You don't know what their experience is or anything like that. And that is a problem with voters. And so, but Dion, you and I are about voter education and informing voters. Sammy
just did that.
And so, but I do, again, and not to justify all of this, but the Democrats actually got me at, when Kenji said you had to be a biologist to be a woman. And that's where I was like, okay, whoa, what?
Yeah, that was it. That was it for me. And that's my point, that just shows, and it just shows the hypocrisy of now everyone's so upset about Roe versus Wade and violating women's rights, but you've been stripping away our rights as women by calling us birthing people.
Yes.
When we are women,
and also changing the definition of a fetus and embryo to cells.
Right. And so again, we keep I don't know why we're recreating the wheel or needing to redefine.
I know why.
Yeah, Sammy, go ahead.
Damaris, this is a great point, because it really boils my blood when I hear this, because these are the same folks that are telling us follow the science when it comes to COVID. And these are the folks that tell us, biology. These are the folks that tell us climate change is real and it's here. Follow the science. And now you're telling me that, the science says that you're born either a man or a woman. It's simple. It's simple. It has nothing to do with what you're going to choose later on to do. I can care less what you do, who you marry, who you love. And everybody knows that I don't care about that. It really don't. But you're either born one thing or the other. It's the science, the biology. These are the same folks that are telling us, you got to do this, but no, ignore the science on this one, because this is what we believe. And I think that's pervasive and that's hypocritical.
Excuse me, Minister. What does the word pervasive mean? But back to Reverend, I said it in the show thousands of times, Mona.
Dion,
Reverend Dr.
Don't do that to me, okay?
He wants to give Mona's geography lesson in your extended vocabulary. We're losing American viewers by the minute. But back to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, where I said on the show 1,000 times. He said it best: as a reverend, the church again should be ashamed of himself. You can't legislate morality. Now, Mona and my Mona, if you guys would share the screen of the New York One article where Antonio Delgado is quoted as saying, and let's see if they leave it alone and keep it moving. He says, Delgado sent a statement Wednesday that read in part. Remember, this is in writing now. Like many New Yorkers, I was raised. That's tonight. This is tonight.
He sent it after. He sent it today.
Exactly.
Blowback from yesterday, where he publicly said on video, not in a statement, what he is.
No, but you see, that's the point, Mona. Behind the scenes, the political consultants or whoever that's on the payroll and Hookles and Chokel sat him down in that nice dark room, or they wrote the script for him. Just say, co-sign this, and I'll continue. Quote, Delgado sent a statement Wednesday to New York One that read in part, quote, like many New Yorkers, I was raised as a blend of heritage. I am proud to be a Black American with Cape Verdean and Latino roots, end quote. So once again, critical thinking, common sense, reading and writing, that's it. Now the question is, will we as a people and voters in the primary let this rock continue? Will we let the narrative end here and not keep putting it out there on our various mediums, the Caribbean news across the board, the independent Latino media across the board, the candidates that are Latino themselves, are they going to let this rock? Because Dion Powell said here for 3 times, if not 5 times, I am not voting for the re-election of Kathy Hochul and the newly appointed Lieutenant Governor. What's his name again? Antonio Ramon Delgado.
Okay, real quick, I got a question for you, Mona, because I have somebody put a statement in, dear friend, that says that Antonio Delgado never claimed to be Afro-Latino. He sent out a statement yesterday. So, just to clarify for the folks that are watching, what was the initial statement? And I know they're backtracking all over the place now because this kind of blew up in their face. What was the original statement? Just for the benefit of our folks.
In his communications, in his statements throughout the years, from his campaign for Congress, statements from his office in Congress, yesterday and today, he has said that he is Afro-Latino. This is what he has said.
I kind of disagree with that. I think
he would not have called him Mundo.
Yeah, no, that is what that is what the statements have said. He has been Afro-Latino, And then today, as you say, he's saying again, he's Latino roots. But yesterday, again, you go back to the video,
Right.
We
Now,
can play that video again. And he says, and that's why he believes he's Afro-Latino.
but Mona, that's
Yeah. So hold on. I want to play the video for
Share-
Sammy's person so
share the
that we
article.
can listen to what he is saying. And that is why, do you really think that Kathy Hochul would tout the first Latino, the first Afro-Latino in her press release if he did not say that? Do you think all of these Latino organizations, community leaders, politicians, everybody and their mother would be saying, yay, we got a Latino, we got an Afro-Latino, if there's no history of the man claiming to be Afro-Latino?
That is correct.
I think
That's
that,
correct.
the governor checked off the box, and the box was the Latino box, because the Latino community is rightfully upset and outraged at the lack of representation. But appointing Antonio Delgado, who she knows full well is not Latino, who she knows full well is African American and Cape Verdean. Cape Verde is on the coast of Africa. Appointing him and thinking she is going to appease the Latino community, okay, and dupe the Latino community into voting for someone who is not Latino instead of voting for 3 Latinas that are running, 2 the Democratic primary candidates, and the third one that will be running as a Republican in the general. Okay, this is unacceptable because it is not fair. I am not Latino. I am South African. I speak Dutch. I speak Afrikaans, and I am not Dutch. And I'm not claiming to be Dutch. I'm not claiming to be white. I'm not claiming to be anything. So what they did is a complete insult. It is offensive to me as a New Yorker, as a voter, as an African. And I would think it would be insulting to my Latino brothers and sisters as well, who are rightfully demanding representation on this level. As far as I'm concerned, there is no difference between Antonio Delgado, Jessica Krug, who claimed to be Latina, Rachel Dolezal. It's appropriating and lying and misinforming people for your own benefit, for your professional career, because there is a reward, and the reward is your job, your profession. It's being elected, and his reward right now as a Latino, as a so-called Afro-Latino, which he's not, is being appointed lieutenant governor, when that position should then have gone to a real Latino. So I want to do 2 things. I want to play the video again. If our producer could put the video up again. When she's
my apologies. I'm sorry. I do have a prior engagement that I need to. It's very important that I get to. I would love to. This topic is very important to me, especially the lack of Latino representation. But I really do have to get to my next engagement that I have to deal with, and I've already put it off for 20 minutes, so that I can continue enjoying this, because I love speaking with you, Sammy. It was a pleasure meeting you and seeing you. Mona, reach out anytime. Dion, you're awesome. You're going to keep nailing those Democrats to the wall, but I'm not looking to nail them to the wall. I'm looking to help, really improve them. Let's take out the fake butt implants. Let's take out the fake boobs, right? Let's go back to, reality and the basics of what the majority of us New Yorkers need. And Kathy Hochul's team, they failed her miserably, and it's terrible. And the media failed us. And so that I'll hold the media responsible for failing Latinos. And I'm going to give some of my Latino downstate leaders the chance to be like, they never met the guy, so maybe they didn't know. But somebody duped us and they let us down. I am so sorry that I have to leave you guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Please, I hope you invite me back on the show again someday. And I'll speak to you guys soon.
All right,
Thank you,
Damaris. Take
Karen.
care.
Okay, so Sammy, we're playing the video again, and we'll stop it after he talks, after he says, and that's why he believes or identifies as Afro-Latino.
We have subtitles that you can screenshot as well.
Yes.
Black and Puerto Rican. I'm curious, what's accurate, and if you could speak a little more broadly about.
Could it go louder?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I am African American, and I am Cape Verdean. That is those are the core aspects of my background. Because of my name, Antonio Ramon Delgado. Maybe because I also played basketball a little while out in Puerto Rico, and I love my Puerto Rican brothers and sisters. I really do, but I'm not Puerto Rican. But Afro-Latino. I think the Cape Verdean aspect of that is certainly a part of my identity. But at the same time, I grew up, like I said, at Macedonia Baptist Church.
Okay,
Black
we can
Baptist
stop it
church.
there.
So very
I'm
much-
sorry, Mona, but this is getting harder and harder to watch. Please stop.
Okay, yeah, we can stop it
He
there.
said it. He said it.
Let
He tried to
me-
thread the
let-
needle. He tried to
Yes,
thread the needle.
we tried to thread the needle. So I'm just going to ask our producer to just play it again from 5213.
No.
Yes, one more time. Okay, one more time.
Stop.
Congressman, I have a question about your heritage has been described in a couple of different ways in the press. Black and Puerto Rican. I'm curious, what's accurate, and if you could speak a little more broadly about how your background informs you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I am African American, and I am Cape Verdean. That is those are the core aspects of my background. Because of my name, Antonio Ramon Delgado. Maybe because I also played basketball a little while out in Puerto Rico, and I love my Puerto Rican brothers and sisters. I really do, but I'm not Puerto Rican. But Afro-Latino. I think the Cape Verdean aspect of that.
This is triggering me.
So we can stop right there. He
Yeah.
I'm
says
triggered.
Verdean aspect of that. Okay, so I'm going to ask our producer if she could put the photo of Cape Verde on a map.
Oh, show the article.
Yes, let's put it there.
Oh God.
Hey, viewers, okay, Sammy's friend, as you can see, Cabo Verde, that's Portuguese for Cape Verde, is there off the coast of Africa between Mauritania and Senegal. It is a Portuguese colony, the same way that Mozambique, Angola, Sao Tome and Principe, Guinea-Bissau, it's the Portuguese colony like them. And just because you were colonized by the Portuguese doesn't make you Portuguese, but because you were colonized by the Portuguese, it does give you, many people Portuguese sounding last names. So many Angolans, many Mozambicans, and others who were colonized by the Portuguese have Portuguese names. The same way in South Africa, we were colonized by the Dutch, and many of us have Dutch sounding last names. The same way that in Namibia, that was colonized by the Germans, many people have German last names, and many people speak German. Okay, they're still Africans. So Mr. Delgado, his heritage, his family is from Cape Verde. He is African American and Cape Verdean, which is an African. He is not Latino. There is no language connection. There is no cultural connection. There is no geographic connection between Cape Verde, Cape Verdeans, who are Africans, and Latin America, which includes South America, Central America, and parts of the Caribbean. There is no connection. It is a bald-faced lie. It is a delusion, and I don't see why everyone now is expected to buy into this delusion that somehow Cape Verdeans are Latinos, because that would make Angolans Latinos, Mozambicans, Latinos, and all of the others colonized by the Portuguese Latinos when they are Africans.
Well, Mona, that's irrelevant because once again, what's going to be pumped out there? Not this video, but the New York One article that came out after 7 o'clock tonight, which has the man's statement. What is the media compromised going to keep putting out there around the world? Remember, Politico itself since 2018 said this man was Puerto Rican. So who is going to eat up what? How many of the conscious voters, educated voters that we have out there are actually going to remember this? Because voters don't remember in June, if not August, whatever it is.
In many of the outlets, the Latino outlets that I'm involved in, they touted it initially before I was sent the information that you sent me, Mona, was touted that he was, of Puerto Rican descent. As a matter of fact, I had a friend of mine that told me that he met with him in the Catskills a couple of years ago when he was running. And my friend's Puerto Rican, and he met with him. He was very excited, and Antonio Delgado never denied it. Had a conversation with him the whole time, and he was talking about Puerto Rico and my fellow Puerto Rican. And Antonio Delgado never told him, "Hey, listen, I'm not Puerto Rican."
We said that.
I'm not. But wait, because I am going to follow up what you said. I personally am not going. I think that this is the latest string of false steps that the governor has had that I personally am not going to be voting for in the primary. I am probably going to be supporting Tom Suozzi and Diana Reina. Full disclosure.
That's right. Say it loud.
Because this is just one of the many false steps, missteps that the governor has had that I believe she has disqualified herself from running for office. And this is just, like I said, this is just the latest. So, Dion, I'm second. I'm second.
You. We more people of the silent majority have to say, "Hey, it's time to vote. Who should I vote for?" Well, who you should vote for, who you should not vote for, report card, and why. We got to stop the game of saying we can't tell you who to vote for. And this is a true voter education, civic engagement, and education. On top of that, my friend who we talked to earlier, Richard Nunez Lawrence, is another political operative and consultant. He said to this man too when he met them, "Hey, it's great to be an Afro-Latino today." Delgado felt a little apprehensive. So you see, the signs were there. But once again, his campaign team smartly played it all along, got him elected. He didn't run against any Latinos opposed card until now. So once again, it's up to these Latinas candidates in the debates, in their platforms when they speak, to either pull his card or let it rock and put the feelings before the facts. However, I think the Latino Republican candidate, if they go a long way to November, maybe she will pull that card because Republicans, conservatives, they don't like the identity politics either.
Yeah, they call them out. Well, I'm getting one. Hopefully, I don't know, Mona, if you were willing, but they will contact you and you can interview.
Yes.
I reached out to Diana Reina's team, and they would love to come on your show.
Yes, that would be wonderful. We'd love to interview them with Meet the Candidate. We'd love to interview all the candidates running for lieutenant governor and governor, Republican and Democrats. We are nonpartisan, and we just report the facts. So Dion, our producer, just notified me that she has the New York One, the latest New York One article with his statement that she can just post. Now, if you scroll down a little bit, it says here, this is what he said yesterday, the video that we played. Because of my name, Antonio Ramon Delgado, maybe because I also played basketball a little while in Puerto Rico, and I love my Puerto Rican brothers and sisters. I really do, but I'm not Puerto Rican, but Afro-Latino. I think the Cape Verdean aspect of that is certainly a part of my identity. Cape Verdean are not Latinos. Cape Verde is a colony of Portuguese. They are African people. It's a shame that Mr. Delgado is refusing to acknowledge his African identity. So as an African, I'm deeply, deeply offended by that. Now, if we scroll down, Dion, you can read the statement that
I can read, really?
After yesterday's controversy.
Well, I can't really, let's see, I gotta make this, all right, I'm gonna say this. Delgado sent a statement Wednesday, once again, taken in the dark room, nice and written and premeditated. Delgado sent in a statement Wednesday, his writers behind the scene, ghost writers, they say in the rap game, used to be a rapper too, by the way. Delgado sent a statement Wednesday that read in part, like many New Yorkers, I was raised as a blend of heritage is. I am proud to be a Black American with Cape Verdean and Latino roots. Once again, Mona, that's the statement from the office. It's going to go out there. The man said it. Now, once again, who's going to pull his card? When, why, and how? And where the compromised media from whatever party puts it out there repeatedly, because this is going to hurt the Kathy Hochul endorsed machine by all those parties. Will any of those people that endorsed them pull their endorsements for said reason? If not, once again, shame on them for whatever entities they represent. And that's what I got to say about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Dion.
Thank you, Dion.
Well, look, this is the fact of the matter, okay? There is no difference between Jessica Krug and Antonio Delgado. Jessica Krug duped everyone into believing that she was a Latina, she was a professor, she was an academic, she was a leading scholar on Latina studies, Latino studies, and Latino women studies because she was a Latina. Because Jessica Krug lied and duped everyone, genuine, real Latinas were denied professional and academic opportunities. In this case, Mr. Delgado, Antonio, he's not Latino. He is Cape Verdean and African American, and Cape Verdeans are not Latinos. There is
enough.
geographic connection. It is off the coast of Africa and they are Africans. There is no cultural connection. They're not Spanish, they're Portuguese. And good luck trying to tell a Portuguese person that they're Latino because they would be deeply offended. Okay? They are very proud. Spain and Portugal have gone to war. Okay? They are not the same. Do not lump them together. And then culturally, there is no connection. So geographic, language, culture, there is no connection. Cape Verdeans are Africans. They are off the coast between Senegal and Mauritania. That's a fact. No Portuguese colonies people right now will identify themselves as Latinos. If you ask any Angolan, any Mozambican, other Cape Verdeans, are you Latino? They would laugh at you.
Well,
it's really and truly unfortunate that Kathy Hochul's team, her vetting team, have failed her once again.
Well, you got to keep.
This is why it's important that New York State starts teaching geography in school and world history in school, because perhaps if New York State taught geography in school and world history in school, political reporters and others would know that Cape Verde is off the coast of Africa and Cape Verdeans are Africans. And this would all be avoided.
Well, let's keep in mind, let's not touch education yet, the industry of that when it comes to education of geography and civics. Because right now they're trying to inject some more educational items as to what the definition of a woman is and what the definition of life is. So let's go more politically. And this is why I want Little Africa News to follow and investigate this further, which is to the Hispanic Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus. Number one, Adriano Espaillat, who Sammy knows and loves, right? He has not been let into the Congressional Black Caucus. Why is that? Now, Mr. Delgado's team and himself, he co-signed his admission into the Hispanic Caucus. Now, what are those two entities going to do with their statement? That's why we have to keep pouncing on these people progressively with our minority media, and once again reflected in our minority votes in June and November and August, or whatever the case may be. Because if you let this rock, once again, it proves with the Republicans and Donald Trump, the orange man, we can all agree that he's orange descent, can say that this is fake news. Literally. But once again, the compromised media will not say this is fake news. Because right now, Mona, if you ask me, what's going on right now, people are just trolling. They're just trolling. So I just go to other independent medias, either conservative side, libertarian side, pragmatic, centrist side, and see it for what it is. But if we draw this one issue out for the gubernatorial race and educate people, which we are with this one point, and how our own policies that help us feel good because it looks good and sounds good like us are going to hurt us long term, with on top of the liberal progressive agenda that's piggybacked on the black progressive methodology of the 60s to put all these things in place. Roe v. Wade is going to overshadow this. The Ukraine is going to overshadow this. People are going to forget when it's time to circle that bubble.
Well, I see we have a comment here from Michael Benjamin saying, read what Luis Miranda, Melissa Mark Viverito, and Camille Rivera said.
Well,
so
Viverito campaigned with him thinking that he was Puerto Rican. She said it.
Yes. So I'm going to ask our producer to go back to the New York One article. If our producer could please put back the New York One article. And here in the New York One article, once it comes on, Melissa Mark Viverito said, Melissa Mark Viverito, who campaigned for Delgado in 2019 under the impression that he had Puerto Rican roots, was confused. And here I'm quoting her, open quote. I was excited to see potentially a Latina finally getting elected statewide, and now there's this hook that's been thrown in. So, that is what she said. Luis Miranda, whose organization, Latino Victory Fund, let me just see if it's back on. Okay, good. It's back on. Luis Miranda said, no doubt that a Latino name becomes a sort of a seal of approval. If I don't know any of them, at least this one seems to be from my tribe, said Luis Miranda, chair of the Latino Victory Fund. Political strategist Camille Rivera thinks Hochul's pick of Delgado in a race with two Latinas is offensive to a community that now feels has been taken for granted by establishment Democrats. She's being shrewd and cunning in the calculations, as in all fairness should be, Rivera said. So, thank you. We can take off the New York One now.
Mona,
what is clear, and I hope this answers Sammy's friend's question, is that, people were misled into believing Antonio Delgado was Puerto Rican or Latino or Afro-Latino. And it happens that he simply is not. And just because he chooses now to identify as Afro-Latino because he loves his Puerto Rican brothers and sisters after playing basketball in Puerto Rico, that does not...
You can't see it with a straight face, Sammy.
That does not make him Latino or Afro-Latino. There is zero connection.
Mona.
We refuse to buy into Mr. Delgado and the Democrats.
Oh, you said Democrats? Say it again.
Yes. Mr. Delgado, Kathy Hochul, and the Democrats' delusion.
This is the voter education.
Is is affiliated with Latinos and Latin America. So that I just think it's outrageous. I'm insulted as a New York voter. Antonio, wherever you are, feel free to come on our show. Listen, we have a newspaper, Little African News. We're the only African newspaper, not just in New York City, not just in New York State, but in the country. So feel free to come here. We would have loved to support you, my African brother, being the first African, being appointed to lieutenant governor, or the first person of direct African immigrants being appointed to lieutenant governor. We, the African community, we would have had your back. We would have supported you. We would have been proud of you, just as we would have been proud of it being a real Latino or Latina.
Right, exactly.
This was a missed opportunity. And I think that the more they push this
narrative.
narrative,
Who are they?
being the Democrats,
Oh,
Antonio Delgado and Kathy Hochul. The more they push this false narrative, all that it's showing New York voters, especially Black voters, is that we cannot trust you.
and also a place of emotions, intelligence.
As simple as this. If you can play us for fools when we can clearly see Cape Verde is in Africa, it's off the African coast, and there is no connection to Latin America or Latinos. If we can clearly see that. So for you to tell us otherwise with the bold-faced lie is deeply offensive and deeply insulting. Yes, Mr. Powell.
Well, thank you, Miss Davids. I just want to hear you speak Dutch and Afrikaans before the end of the show. Now, I'm gonna be a
Okay, so I'm going to say something in Afrikaans, okay, which is Old Dutch. Moenie kak praat nie. Okay, it means don't talk.
That's great, Monique.
Praat nie.
So
Go
many
ahead,
lessons here. Now I'm gonna be a horrible political consultant and give so much information out there for free because this is the true voter education instead of the methodology to program you to vote and walk away and the world's supposed to be a better place. Now, number one, I gotta tip my hat off to Mr. Delgado's campaign team and team for making this happen since 2018. He won. Victor Sport. I gotta also commend Kathy Hochul's new and improved and learning as they go damage control team with that statement that they're going to push out there above that video. Now, my friends and family, here's the real voter education civics. If you go to elections.ny.gov under the campaign finance tab, you can see who's been giving to the Hochul, now Delgado campaign. And all those people that contributed, if you feel some sort of way, or if the people put the pressure on them, you should withdraw your money and ask for it back. The next thing, if you Google Hochul and endorsements, look at all that stuff that comes up. You see all those people, entities, unions, and beyond that have endorsed her. Once again, the general public, put the pressure on them to pull their endorsements, or they should be killed and shamed already from the facts because they know it's going to be a matter of time before their card is pulled as needed by one team or another. And yes, put the pressure on all those endorsements because the Latino Victory Fund statement means nothing to me unless they pull their endorsement and pull their money and it's reflected on elections.ny.gov or in the above aforementioned Google search. Once again, Dion Powell, nyconsultant.us, the worst consultant politically there is.
Dion, I just want to give you a little dose of reality. The Democratic Party is so much entrenched in special interest throughout New York State that just pulling endorsement like that, it's not going to just be done. All right. These folks they owe favors to each other. I mean, it's running twice. I saw it. It is going to be very hard, and it's going to take a wave from the other party, perhaps, or maybe the voters just saying, you know what, enough is enough. We've had it. And I think we're very close, but it's gonna be very, very tough. And we need good candidates. So hopefully that happens. And I just want to say, Mona, before we leave, that I thank you for bringing this to your attention, because had you not put a little emphasis on this through social media, it would have been probably swept under the rug. Probably for another 2 or 3 weeks, we would have not known anything.
That's why I have a subscription to Little Africa News, and so should everybody watching this program, both electronically and in hard copy.
And we'd like to see you run for something, Mona.
Yeah, Mona. Yeah. Run, Mona, run.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's
Lieutenant Governor, first African Lieutenant Governor female. That sells itself.
Got my vote.
Well, I will say one thing. We are long overdue for an African immigrant to be elected to office anywhere in New York City or in New York State, because so far there has not been an African immigrant elected to any office. And most of the other immigrant groups have all been able to elect their people.
Can I add to that? I want to add to that too. It seems as though because of the last election cycle's disappointment in the African community, the civic education push is wanting, and now there's uncertainty amongst the the African electorate, if that's a vocabulary word. And right now, unless somebody rises to the surface like a Charles Fall and really blows this up with outrage, I don't really see it happening. And that's just me on the ground. A lot of African leadership here in the Bronx, if I'm gonna say, are now toting and pushing a lot of Democrat, and I'll say I won't offend any of these leaders, I know personally, compromise African agenda. And Mona, you know some of these people as well. And that's a part of the problem. Just like some of the Latino leadership right now with the situation, they too will co-sign and they will be compromised with the whole blue Kool-Aid, which tastes delicious internationally.
Yeah, I see Michael Benjamin said something here. He says that my name is a common Jewish surname, and I had a great uncle who went to synagogue, but I never thought to pretend to be a Jew. Delgado was being deliberately deceptive for political advantage. I completely agree with Michael Benjamin on this. This was politically expedient for him when he ran back in, 2018, and it's politically expedient right now for Hochul and for him. And this is unfortunate because if you can lie to voters for something as simple and as basic as this, what else are you going to lie to us about? And consider Kathy Hochul's track record with Brian Benjamin, and now this. I mean, it really gives no confidence in her. And that's unfortunate because I'm one of those voters who still hasn't made up my mind. But I'm looking at all of this. I'm seeing what's going on.
Well, I hope after this you kind of like start
exactly
weeding some folks out.
Once again,
listen, you have to understand. Little African News, we're nonpartisan.
You're nonpartisan, correct? And I get it. I get it.
Opportunity. I have noticed. I hope that Kathy Hochul, along with the other gubernatorial candidates, will engage the African community and the African diaspora community and come on Little African News. And I hope the same thing for our lieutenant governor candidates, all three of our Latinas, and my fellow African brother, Antonio Delgado. I hope that he will come here on Little African News because, it's about educating our communities and empowering voters. But this is not good. And as far as I'm concerned, just as you're not going to tell me that, you're a unicorn, you're definitely not going to tell me that you're Latino when I know that, you're
not correct.
This is beyond.
Stay that way, Mona. It should, because we should. You're bringing us the information, and the way it should. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and Damaris is in the chat. She's returned. But I will say this: I'm sure this is beyond Nino Brown, which is Brian Benjamin and Mr. Delgado, in the sense that you got to look at the whole apparatus here, which is saying, hey, we'll try to do better next time. If you don't see the people behind the scenes that don't look like us, and I've been vocal about that too, since I was in the chair of the caucus of color of the New York State Young Democrats, then that's a part of the problem. They preach diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, but they're not giving us access to ownership, capital, and leadership roles with the ability to hire and fire in the Hochul administration. That's across the board, because if you don't have people on the ground telling people upward what is really going on, you'll be embarrassed. And there's a lot of behind the scenes resentment. But like I said to a lot of colleagues and beyond, November is going to go very, very dark purple, if not red, for this reason, because it will be reflected for the people that are educated like myself, who will always put this out there and remind people, put this out there that, hey, next year, you might have people that live in New York City for 30 days voting elections. How do you feel about that? Oh, and by the way, NYCHA is still broken. Oh, and by the way, MTA is still broken. Oh, by the way, they're putting shelters in your neighborhood when homelessness is through the roof. And every morning you go to work, you have 2, 3, 4, beds of people that are just sleeping there that refuse to go to the new clean shelter system that they're building in your backyard. Oh, by the way, bail reform. Sammy's going to walk from the Bronx to Buffalo next time. I'm going to be right there with them too. And how do you feel about that? And people like me on the ground, the vocal silent majority like myself, the true voter education of elections.ny.gov, where you can see it for yourself in your face. If you still sharing that blue bubble in June and in August and in November, think before you vote. Raheem Soto, the urban conservative, and me. This is Beyond the Vote as well with the civic education portion. Thank you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah, there's elections next year too. So yeah, that kind of thing. Redistricting.
I see Michael Benjamin made a very good point. He said the election of an African immigrant or first generation African will happen in time. He says your producer might be that person. Okay, so I hope the producer is listening to what Michael Benjamin is saying.
That would be great. You have me in that campaign.
Yes, we do hope the producer is listening. So, gentlemen, I just want to say thank you very much. I'd like to just do closing remarks and final thoughts on this. So we'll start off with you, Sammy.
Well, no, just basically, folks, do your homework. Thank you, Mona, again for having this platform and just telling us the information like we're supposed to hear it, and we lack this. You're not just co-signing what the political parties or what they want us to hear. You go to a lot of platforms and you hear people regurgitate the same things that is coming from the politicians, and you don't do that. So I appreciate it. And I want to ask people that this time around, do your homework and look, see who's running, and because it's very important. The soul of our state is at stake in this election. So we have an obligation to get it right. Thank you, Mona.
Thank you, Sammy. And Dion, final thoughts?
Dion, the worst campaign political consultant there is at Dion at nyconsultant.us is going to give you another civic education piece. If you go and Google New York City Campaign Finance Board or nyccfb.info, you too can run for office. This is not a spectator sport. And next year, 2023, with redistricting, find out what that is, and run for office with 8-to-1 matching funds. On top of that, see who's running for office now. See where the money's coming from. Believe it or not, a lot of these people will tell you to their face, we hate gentrification, we hate big pharma, we hate the real estate game. But if you look at the money there, nyccfb.info, they're taking the money. Does that make sense? And lastly, I will say this. May the 4th be with you. And tomorrow actually is Revenge of the 5th. And there you have it.
So Damaris is back, and she just wants to give some closing remarks as well. Welcome back, Damaris.
Thank you. I wanted to sign back in before I jump back out again. But I did want to say everything that Sammy had said and Dion had said in regards to looking up and doing research. I live in lower southern Westchester, and the lack of Latino representation in the county of Westchester is even more abysmal. And it's so hard to find those organizations because everybody is kind of dispersed and they've assimilated into their communities and they're not as involved, but they also deserve representation. So we deserve a fair representation and not just a matter of, political gain to check mark the boxes. It's about, experience and understanding, but it's also about understanding the community in which you represent, that you understand their history, you understand how to communicate with them, right? And so I think it's so important that we do really have at some point a statewide Latino rep, as well as a New York City wide Latino rep, as well as a Westchester County, Westchester County eventually, but certainly more representation. And we're not, we may seem like a unicorn, right? We come in all different sizes and colors. We have different types of names. We don't all have Spanish surnames. As I mentioned, my last name is Mone, it's French, but I'm not French. And so it's important not to ride the last name, right? It's important for you because, again, we were talking, earlier in last year's elections with Kathy Garcia. So many people thought that she was Puerto Rican as well, right? So there had to be a clarification for that. So I asked the same as
that's another situation.
I asked the electorate, the voters, to please pay closer attention and do a better outreach and be the diverse community that you say that you are, that you represent and reflect the state of New York and the city of New York. And I think it's really, really important. So Mona, thank you so much for having me on today and having the chutzpah to have this conversation, right? And to talk about, what is it about identity politics and why is it that now everything's being appropriated but not appropriated? So I don't, it's topsy-turvy world. We're redefining everything and it's hard to find variance.
Appropriated but not appropriate. See what I did there? And what's with you guys hating on unicorns, man? What about another mythical creature?
Listen, we're tired of people telling us that they're unicorns and expecting us to believe and just go along with them being unicorns. We shouldn't be forced to conform or go along with people's delusions. I'll close by saying this again. All candidates, we have our Meet the Candidates video interview series that we're going to be launching very soon. We did it with the municipal races for mayor and city council last year, and we're going to do it for the state races, as well as the lieutenant governor and gubernatorial races. So everyone is welcome to come here and engage us at Little African News and engage our African diaspora community. Michael Benjamin said something that I thought was really interesting. He says, Team Hochul has no clue about how to relate to racial minorities beyond cheap symbolism. And I think that indeed is very, very accurate, and it's true. Team Hochul really needs to do a better job, and playing identity politics and not properly vetting her appointees is a serious concern for all New Yorkers. That brings into question her judgment and her sense of discernment. I think that it's unfortunate given what just happened with Brian Benjamin. Here we have controversy of voters now being duped into believing that Antonio Delgado is Latino or Afro-Latino when he clearly is not, because Cape Verde is in Africa, off the coast of Africa, and Cape Verdeans are Africans. They are not Latinos. So I think that, it is insulting to all New Yorkers, not just the Latino community, what's going on. And I hope that their PR people and their crisis management people and their spin people stop what they're doing. And I hope that Team Hochul actually hires people who can understand various racial identities and the history of those identities. Mm-hmm. I think that is a big part that is lacking in Team Hochul. And I hope that the other candidates are also listening as well, because I'm very curious what are the demographics of people working in your campaigns, because based on the people working on your campaigns, we know who the people are that you're going to hire. So, to our panel, our brilliant panel of guests, thank you so very much for joining us here at Little African News. We will continue to bring the hard-hitting news, and we will continue to bring the good news, the uplifting news, and the informative and engaging news to our communities, to our viewers, and to our readers. So everyone be safe and be well. Thank you so very much for joining us this evening.
And thank you, Michael Benjamin. Thank you, Michael Benjamin, for saying Dion is on point.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.